Welcome to Healing Beyond the Trauma. My name is Megan Alves. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. And this podcast, I want to break the stigma around mental health and have real, unfiltered conversations about healing. Some stories are going to be raw, even triggering at times, but they're real and they're honest because healing starts with honesty. If you've ever felt overwhelmed, stuck, or like you're carrying it all, you're not. Here, you're going to gain validation, practical tools, and a new perspective to move forward. Because healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about reclaiming your future. So let's dive in. Hi, and welcome to a new episode of the podcast. I am so excited to introduce another amazing community member out here who really is ready to share his story, and you're not going to want to miss parts of this, let me tell you. So before I ramble on about him, I'm going to let him introduce himself. This is Robert Banghart, and I'm going to let you take it over. Tell us about yourself. Tell us what you're doing in the community because it is inspiring to say the least.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. My name is Robert Banghart. I am the VP of Community Integration for the Shine a Light Foundation. It's a homeless outreach and continuity case management program that helps our friends living in the tunnels and washes and homeless encampments to rebuild their lives, accept help, and we walk them through the next 18 months of their life utilizing the safety net. And I'm also the Director of Community Engagement for Crossroads of Southern Nevada. That's the largest indigent detox and treatment center in the state of Nevada. We deal primarily with your homeless population, Medicaid, many other avenues, but that's where kind of the tip of the sword in that. And then I'm also a part owner and operator of Divine Intervention Transitional Housing. We have about 7 different properties where we house our clients afterwards, and again, the next step of rebuilding their lives. And I'm also a person in long-term recovery as of August 10th, 2018.
Congratulations. And everything that you're doing in this community. I mean, I'm not sure how you sleep with the amount of things on your plate and the support that you supply to so many. So thanks for showing up today and creating some space to tell us about your story. And for those listening, tell us how that's a long-term recovery. The one thing about addiction that I always love to talk about is that this isn't just an overnight shift, right? This isn't something that you want to try to do on your own. And I know you have points in your story about that. So take us through how you got to where you are today and really how you came out of that addiction. Start us from the beginning. Let us know.
All right. So for me personally, I believe that I was born an addict and alcoholic. I had the mental obsession from a very young age, and not necessarily to use, but like I was restless, irritable, and discontent. I was the guy that, smiled in pictures, but internally I was fighting battles. You know what I mean? It was very uncomfortable. I wasn't somebody that could look in the mirror and be happy. I wasn't. So there was a lot of that. For me, it started with mental health, right? And my first drug of choice was behavior. I acted out. I was seeking relief in a lot of ways, and I had some things happen to me, you know what I mean? Definitely. I think all of us have a story, but, my father was an alcoholic. My first memory was of him, hitting my mom in an argument and disappearing. I never saw him again, so some things happen, but I think in retrospect, looking back at it, I grew up in a home. I always had hot meals. I had supportive parents. They were, new parents and all that stuff, but nothing that should have driven me down the path that I went, right? So I know that I'm alcoholic by definition, right? I have that disorder, and, that was my life for most of my life. I progressed. I went to prison at a young age. I got out of prison. I decided to do a geographical. I came to Vegas. And when I came to Vegas, I was, at that point, able to maintain it at a certain level. I was working really nice jobs. I was a chef. So I was working for, Wolfgang Puck, Emeril Lagasse, all these guys. But outside of work, I was miserable. I was unhappy at work. Everybody knew that I was unhappy. It was just very progressive, right? Tail end of my story, I had come into recovery and I had about 3 years. So I came in and I did all the things they asked me to do, but for me it came back very quickly. So immediately I thought, not out loud, but I think internally I thought that, I had figured it out, right? That I didn't need this help anymore. You know what I mean? Thank you. I got it from here. And that's just kind of how it went. I was dry for about 2 years, and then I relapsed. And when I relapsed, I was homeless within a month, and I was homeless for about 5 years. My homelessness was very progressive, just like my addiction. And tail end of that, for the last 2.5 years, I was living in a tunnel underneath the city with about 20 other people. And I can remember the day that I looked at that tunnel. When my friend introduced me to it, it was like the same feeling that I get today when I go home to my fiance and my stepdaughter. It was like my home. I knew it. And really, what it was is I knew I could go. It was a space that I could go and that I could use the way I wanted to, that I wouldn't be bothered, right? And I use the analogy of Lord of the Flies a lot because it was everybody from the outside was kind of suspect to us, but internally there was a lot of chaos too. The last day that I was homeless, I had my hustle when I was homeless, how I survived was, low-end stuff, dumpster diving and, petty crimes, nothing crazy, but
Yeah.
I had,
Robert, before you go into that last day, not to interrupt, because I know that you've told your story so many amazing times, but for those listening who have just heard this long history with your struggle and the strength that you had to go through addiction, to go through recovery, and then to go through relapse. You said something really profound that I think oftentimes, for anybody who has gone through trauma, right? We can say lowercase trauma to big T trauma, is that there's this idea that you said is that what I was going through because I was raised in a home that already had the support. So I shouldn't have been going down this path. Right. And, like if we were to container that and really kind of string the cord to the stigma there, because to bring you back, you said you grew up in a home with addiction already, right? You grew up, and when we think about addiction and when we think about trauma, it's not just the environmental, but it's also not just the genetics,
yeah,
but then it's not, and then it's also not just the role models that we have around us. It really can be all of those pillars combined together in one way or another, right? Because those genetics can be so strong. And then you also mentioned that that struggle started at such a young age, that there was some mental health struggles, and your way of coping with that ended up down the path of addiction,
yeah, 100%.
right?
Yeah, I was very depressive, and I still experience that to a very minimal level. I think that obviously for me, and I'm not, I know everything has depths and levels, and I'm not. For me, I am able to walk through my depression to this day with, the fellowship that I found in recovery. It works for me. I know that's not the answer for everybody, and I'm not even trying to say that it is, right? Just where mine's at, I'm
Right.
able to walk through it, you know what I mean? But again, everybody is different. So
I
I had,
love that. Yeah. And those listening, it's like what works here, get curious with what works for you because it might not be the right path for you, but there's other paths, right?
man, it's such a
Yeah.
depth, there's such depth to it. For me to say that I have depressive is, what does that mean to you? What it means to you is could be something different, but that's the point, right? Not the problem. That's the point. Like, I think we live in a
Yes.
society of comparison where it has to be like this or and it's like, no, it doesn't. It just needs to be. Like, you just need to take the actions, right? Like, what I really meant was that I had a stable home of support, right? Yes, I had trauma. Yes, I had genetics. Yes, I had some role models in my life that were not doing good, but I chose those role models, right? Whether it be trauma informed, whether it be my addiction, I gravitated toward those, right? I looked up to them. My uncle was a role model to me, and he was, lifelong issues with gambling and other things, and, now since doing very well, and later on I can get into that. He was a massive part of my story later on, but those are the people that I gravitated towards, right? I didn't gravitate towards my stepfather, who was an amazing human being who showed up for me and loved and supported me and wanted to teach me, right? Like, I didn't. I rebelled against him, really, for no reason, right? Because he wasn't what I was trying to achieve in those moments. I have that disease of no choice, right? Like, I think looking back, of course, I would have chose hang out with my stepfather, be a good working class man, all these things, right? But it wasn't about choice.
Yeah. And how easy we often think we just have this choice, right? And that, I often say in the clinical world, like the reward center is saying something totally different. And it would be easy to now with the insight that you have and the path that you've walked. But this also makes you the person that you are today, and thankfully helping others to not take that same path and to see the other paths that are an option, right? And so as you kind of walk through this and went through those relapses and then ended up in a home underneath our city in the tunnels, you went through day to day. There was stints in jail, and then that last, you were mentioning that last day of homelessness.
Yeah. So I spent about 9 years of my life incarcerated, split up in little segments, right? And that last day of homelessness, I had found a suitcase in a dumpster, and I think it was like an eviction or something. It had a whole bunch of somebody's property in it. I grabbed it. I ran back to my tunnel, and then I went to. There was 4 businesses. My tunnel was along some train tracks, and these 4 businesses were. If you didn't live in the area, you had no idea they were there. I don't even know if they were legal, because they're not there anymore. And the 4th business was a guy that I would go to and like swap stuff for drugs or for money, whatever. So I went to him and I dropped all this stuff off because it was a lot. He said, come back in an hour. I said, okay. I went and got high and came back. And when I came back, there was 3 guys waiting for me. I knew who they were. They were other of my homeless buddies, whatever, I had known for a long time. And we kind of had this weird relationship where like we were kind of like competition in a way. We had the same hustles. It's kind of weird to say. But they were waiting for me. They had a pipe, a knife, and a hatchet. And, the true definition of what it is that I am, right? I'm an addict. I have a disease of no choice. And on the other side of them was what I needed to get my next fix. So I went and... I say that because I knew exactly what was going to happen, right? Maybe not all the details, but I knew it was very bad, and, but I went anyway, and then they hit me in the head with the hatchet a couple times, the pipe a couple times, stabbed me, lacerated my liver, they broke my jaw, and they dragged me onto the train tracks, and they left me for dead. So I didn't know this, and this is kind of how God showed up in my life, is that that first business, there was an overnight security guard that I had befriended over the years. I had no idea he was working that night. I had no idea. He saw it all happen. He called the ambulance, the cops, they come, they pull me off the train tracks, I'm dead. They revive me, I wake up, I've got a knife sticking out of my leg, I'm half naked, bruised, all the things going on. They're standing over me, and the train's coming. So it's super loud, and they hit me with a shot of morphine, and I died again. And then I woke up 3 days later on life support, and I woke up in the hospital with a nurse standing over me and trying to calm me. She was yelling at me, but she was kind of like just trying to calm me down because I still thought I was fighting for my life. All the tubes and all the stuff going on, and then I felt a hand touch my forehead, and I heard the words "calm down," and then I felt the presence of what I choose to call God in that room, and. While in that hospital for the next month, I had known Paul, I had known our director before. My family had been coming out here trying to find me from New Jersey, and he was one of the points of contact. They'd be sharing Facebook posts and, just trying to see if anybody had seen me over the years. And he showed up at my hospital bed, and at the time, Shine was a, tiny organization of 4 or 5 volunteers, and we were based out of a treatment center with another mentor of ours, Jeff Iverson. He showed up at the bed and he said, listen, I've got this thing going on. I got a scholarship for you at this treatment center if you want it. And I said, okay. And that was it. Like, that's really what willingness looked like to me in the beginning. It wasn't a conviction to change my entire life. It was just, you know what? If I go back to what I was doing, I'm going to die. I was 120 pounds. I had 4 teeth. I looked like Skeletor on a bobblehead doll. I just knew in my soul if I went back that it was going to end badly. So I just said okay. And that was it. I just kept saying okay, and I've been saying okay ever since.
Thank you for sharing that. And for those of you listening, so many things stand out here. But one of the things that I love how you say it is what I choose to call God, right? And I think it's so important that this is your path. And again, going back to making your choices in what this recovery process really needed to look like for you, and saying, I'm going to have a willingness to make this change and say, okay. When those that may be struggling and going through something right now and not understanding how to make that choice of willingness, or this idea and the importance of choosing a purpose or a higher power, right? You said what I choose to call God.
Yeah.
Can you go into that a little bit?
I mean, I think what I took out of it in that moment was that I think our understanding of what willingness is, right, or anything is personal. You know, in that moment, that was as much willingness as I could possibly give. That was all the willingness I had. So I gave it my all. Okay was my all in that moment. It didn't need to be this, strong conviction. Didn't need to feel a certain way. I just needed to say, okay. I just needed to show up, right? And that was the simplest things were the most powerful. It wasn't about how I felt about it. It wasn't about how it even made me feel. I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea what was about to transpire in my life, but I just said, okay. It didn't need to be, like I said, some powerful conviction. It didn't need to look a certain way. The message came how it came. I heard something recently that I don't worship the bottle. I worship the message. And for me, it was, I'm not a religious guy personally, but I'm a very spiritual guy. And for me it was the message comes how it comes. For me it came, I found God, my God through a shot of morphine on life support. Like, does it discount the experience? Not at all. The only thing is my head, my judgmental head told me, for whatever reason, I don't even know where it came from, that it needed to look a certain way. Maybe I saw it in a movie somewhere. Like, I literally have no idea. Never really went to church, never, none of that stuff. But my head, like, because it was a narrative that justified my behaviors, my actions, my shame, my guilt, right? And when I let go of that and just looked for God, the universe, whatever was going on, and just took it as it was coming, it was much easier, right? The spiritual realm was much more broad and open to me than I was ever letting it be, right? It didn't need to be anybody else's conception. It didn't need to be anybody else's experience. Like, you know what I mean? Maybe you can't relate for being homeless. It doesn't mean, like, if you have mental health, we all have mental health, right? We're all in recovery from something. Like, when I started to let go of the details, because I just personally believe this, that the devil's in the details, right? The devil in the details, because I'm looking for the details. I'm looking for ways to separate myself from you. I'm looking for ways to be different and unique. And, we all are unique. We all are beautiful and all that. But, like, me sharing my experience doesn't belittle your experience. Your experience is equally as powerful as mine.
Right. I love that. And I think so many people need to hear that. So thank you for sharing that part, right? It doesn't have to look in whatever way. Like you said, you had this idea maybe from a movie of how it was supposed to be. So it just fed that narrative that, well,
Yeah.
I didn't have it. I didn't have the epiphany. So I can keep going. And, as we talk, oftentimes about how the brain is wired, so easily can that reward center, like, okay, so in order for me to feel better, let me go back to these patterns rather than taking a willingness to take another path.
Building a faith in anything, whatever it is that you believe in, right? It's
Yes.
it's not instant gratification, but I am hardwired for instant gratification. So when I don't see instant action, instant relief, I'm like, it's not working.
Mm,
Clearly, it's not working. But the reality is that for me, anyway, I feel like it's a commonality in a lot of us is that even though I had that God shot moment in the hospital, it was still a learned experience. It was an educational variety. It took time, right? I had that
yeah.
behavioral therapy of showing up and doing uncomfortable things and taking direction. And then over time, like I think I was like maybe a year and a half into my journey in recovery. And I remember it clear as day. A group had come out to do some filming with us and we were hanging out with them and they were from the Midwest, and they were amazing human beings, and we just had a great day. And at the end of the day, we're standing around the truck, and it's like me and like whatever, two guys, the camera guy and some other guy, right? We're just talking, had great conversation, and we're just talking about God. Like, I'm somebody that, I was 43 at the time. Like, God was not a very comfortable subject for me, right? And but after a year and a half of some behavioral therapy and recovery and taking some actions and just communicating and letting go of the idea that it needed to be what anybody else thought it was, right? Like, I still don't know what it is. I couldn't draw you a picture. I couldn't tell you, you know what I mean? So I found myself very comfortable in that conversation is the point, right? They don't know what my God is. I don't know what their God is. It didn't matter, right? We're talking about something bigger than ourselves that is helping us. And that's beautiful.
That's beautiful. And as you said a moment ago, is you said, I'm someone who seeks that instant gratification. How would you explain to someone how you have learned tools or whatever we want to call it to help you when that instant gratification urge wants to come in and you have to wait and do the work, right?
Yeah,
How
I
do you
mean,
manage that?
I mean, today it's not that big a deal, right? I've been at it for a while now, so it's not. I have the tools in my life, and I can practice them for the most part, right? I'm not perfect by any means, but I think in the beginning it was just, I had to take a lot of direction from other people, because my first thoughts are not usually conducive to my success, right?
Mm,
It's just the way my mental health works. Very early on in my recovery, I think like most people in recovery, I was a victim. I couldn't see my part in things. Yeah, I was a very big victim. Selfish, tons of guilt and shame and fears, right? Those are not environments that are conducive to healthy thoughts, right? Or healthy
yeah.
thought processing. So for a while, I just kind of stayed quiet. I just showed up. I just did what they asked me to
Mm,
do. I just helped. I tried my best to get out of myself and stayed busy. Really, that was a big thing for me, and obviously still a thing for me today, right? I just try to stay busy and stay connected to a lot of people.
yeah.
And being honest, having honest conversations. In the beginning, it was really awkward, right? To tell another man that I feel this or I feel that. You know what I mean? That wasn't something that I really grew up with. And so, yeah, it was a process, right? And giving myself grace to understand that, like, you are literally rebuilding your life,
Yeah.
and everything about me is exactly why I'm here.
Right.
So I need to let go of all of that stuff, but that doesn't happen overnight. That's a constant process. And some stuff it was easier, some stuff took longer, and obviously some stuff I'm going to be working on for the rest of my life, and that's okay. You know what I mean? But once you get into the groove of this and understand that, like, okay, this is my life now, and you really want to do it, like I enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah, that level of acceptance is so important, right? And there's a bit, I would venture to say, not to, put it in my words in there, a bit of that surrendering, allowing other people to help you so that your narratives can start to calm down. Or as you've learned retraining, I'm sure those narratives have started to shift. So sometimes that's so important when you start to realize that my way isn't the best way all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
Darn
here.
it.
I'm here by grace, not by virtue.
Mhm.
I did everything in my power to not be here. I've overdosed probably 15 times. I spent the last year of my homelessness praying to not wake up and very upset when I did. So that's where my way gets me. And when I can understand that, but a lot of times what happens is you come into recovery, whatever that recovery is for you, we forget that, right? Like our mind, that's just the nature of the addict mentality, right? The addict mind, the way the thought process is, that I forget. The mind of a great forgetter. I can't remember with the same reverence the pain and suffering that I experienced while homeless or in my addiction or the way I impacted other people as much as I can. Or why won't you give me the TV remote in this moment? You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
literally the dichotomy of us. So for me, I have a routine that I practice every day. I sit down every morning, I'll smoke a cigarette, drink my coffee in the morning, text like 400 people to get connected, right? And then I think about, for a couple minutes, I just try to bring myself back into that space. What was it like that last week out there? What was it like that last month out there? The feelings, what did my life look like? Just try to, and I can't do it with the same reverence, you know what I mean? But I can try. And then, what does my life look like today? And in between that, all I see is, my God and recovery working in my life.
Yeah. And you doing that work, right? Actively making that decision, I would venture to say every day, to make the decision to continue to have that willingness of effort and have that willingness of, what would you call it, surrendering to that support?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it gets easier. Right? At some point, there's a transformation where it's not that I have to do this; it's that I get to do this. That
There's
happens. Yeah,
victim to victor mentality, right?
like it. I mean, it's pretty obvious. If I was to look at the stat sheets of my life, first 42 years I was a miserable mess. In
Mm,
the last 6.5 years have been pretty amazing and beautiful. So it's not. There's not a whole lot of gray area in that. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So
Yeah, and it's not too late. Like, that's a long time to just be held so tightly by addiction and wrapped so strong. And then to have, and like you said, this isn't everyone's story, but to have that moment of willingness that that you don't know what it looks like, but that there has to be another path and a better path than what you were on.
yeah, I knew it couldn't be any worse than what I was doing. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
And I am so thankful, and our community is so thankful for your willingness to push through and that addiction didn't take you from everything that you now are providing to so many other people, right? There's that I'm sure huge mountain for you that you got over because you couldn't see what this side could look like. And that life had so much more willingness of living.
Yeah, I can't take too much credit for it. I had very good mentors. I still to this day. That day that I woke up in that hospital, that Paul showed up, and later on I would meet Jeff. They have been my constant mentors and support through it all. And then obviously I've added more people as time has gone on and my life's gotten bigger. But I'm a huge believer in mentorship, right? In whatever area it is that you're trying to expand. And we've got a great team at Crossroads and Shine, so it's not I can't take credit for all that by any means. But you find yourself around some pretty amazing people all trying to get better and trying to help people. As long as the authenticity and the culture is there, like, you're unstoppable.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, and going back to what we talked about earlier, right? And the question that I asked about for someone who struggled with that instance, gratification, satisfaction, whatever it may be, and knowing that that's not an easy path for you to take. It sounds like some of the things that you've really taken in to help you through that is building a community of support around you and those willing to support and understand that you definitely didn't just wake up one day and choose addiction. That didn't just happen overnight. And even in that time, right, as a young kid, you were doing the best that you could without the tools that you now have.
Yes.
And so, when you think about community, also, it sounds like you have a pretty solid routine built into your day.
Yeah, definitely. I
Yeah.
have to check in, right? I like connecting with people. For me, again, like, my God speaks through people, and I got to stay connected to a lot of people, and I get to stay connected to a lot of people. I joke, I want to write a book about the good morning text, right? Because I text so many people every morning, and if I told you all the different branches and things that have happened because of a simple good morning text with so many different people, like, it's really simple acts. That's really what it is.
I love that.
My mental health, when I feel my depressive coming on, it's not these massive things that I need to do. It's not jump into immediate action. It's really just simple things, right? For me, again, that's just my experience. Like, I can just go easier, be a little bit more cautious with my words today, be a little bit more, make sure my feet are moving. Like, just know that, like, not every day needs to be a massive win or look like a massive win, right? For an addict that gets through a day sober or clean, that's a massive win regardless, but, like, not all days feel like, I conquered the world. Some days just feel like, and that's
Yeah.
okay too. It's part of life.
And that still can absolutely be celebrated, right? I don't know one person that is perfect, and I don't know one person that is able to show up as 100% every day. And that is absolutely okay. And I think we need to hear that more often, that it's not possible to show up 100% every day. And it's okay on those days that you show up and you're doing enough. Celebrate that too. That's all right. Rest is important. And you said something really important there too, is listening to yourself. When you notice that you're not able to show up at 100% or even in the capacity to give or to do as much as you show up, right? Like, even if we can't put 100 on that, when you know that you're feeling off, is to really slow down, really check in with yourself and really be mindful of what you're doing. Checking in small. Yes.
Your body and your mind is talking to you. I think a big thing for me also is, what's the analogy? Show me your 5 friends, I'll show you your future. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's very much that. What music am I listening to? What books am I reading? What TV am I watching? What are the conversations that I'm having? Like, all of that stuff affects my mental health, and affects it positively or negatively, right? It's what am I allowing into my circle? So it's not, I'm vigilant with that. I can't have not that I can't, I choose to not have negativity around me. I choose to not be around, if you're not trying to grow, no disrespect to you in any way, but I need to grow and I need to be around this, so I'm going to go over here, and I hope everything's okay with you. I'm still clapping for you, but I've got to go do this, right? Nobody wants my goals as badly as I do. Nobody wants this life as badly as I do. And that's, and I hope it's the same for them, right? Like, but it's not everybody's going to be in your life forever, and you just need to look at that constant inventory in your life of what am I allowing around me, It's super important because a lot of people, I think for a long time I was a people pleaser and I would allow a lot of things around me or, I needed to feel this or whatever it was. And in recovery, I've kind of learned over time that, I'm going to help anybody that reaches out for help, but doesn't mean that they need to be in my personal life. Doesn't mean that I need to, if they're, whatever it is, right? If they're, they like to talk about other people.
Yeah. I love that. Like boundaries are so important and they're so hard. So I'm sure that that has been something that has been a consistent for you if we were to look. Yeah. And I think for many of us, boundaries are hard, but when you start implementing those boundaries and when you realize I want positivity around me, and it doesn't mean that what you're doing is good, bad, right, or wrong. It's just not for me right now. So I'm going to clap for you over here, let you have yours, but I'm going to continue because and I love what you said. I'm going to repeat it is nobody wants my goals as bad as I do.
Yeah.
No one can do those goals for you either, right? Again, going from victim to victor mentality. You've got to put in the work. You've got to make the decision on who's around you. And I like applaud you in such huge ways for sharing that with us and actively doing that work. It's so important.
So important. And it's not, by no means am I perfect with anything that I've told you. And
Yeah.
that's the human experience. I'm a constant work in progress, constant.
Yes. Process, progress, right? We're all in the mix of it. And that's the beautiful part about life, really, if you think about it. When you find that purpose, when you find that drive, and obviously, I mean, if not obviously, let me ask you, what is that drive? What is your mission that keeps you going on those days that really feel like, like depression wants to like put you back in bed? What's your why?
I think for everybody, it's very personal. I think for me,
Yes.
it was, I think it's complete transparency. I have the mind of, in my mind, I have this voice that is very much like a David Goggins type voice.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
very much, it's not very nice to me sometimes, right? But it's very much like, you got sober late. You wasted a lot of years. Don't
Mm-hmm.
waste them now. You got to go after all your goals. You got to get And then I think it's transformed into, I really want to be an advocate for our community, for the people that we serve, and I want to make a difference. That's not easy. That's not something that's going to happen by playing it meekly and, not showing up. And again, the mentors that opened the doors for me, that showed me that it was possible and supported me, made me believe that I could do this. And now, I really have no, I believe that anything's possible, I
Yeah.
really do. But
And
I
I
also,
love that.
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
I also understand the responsibility, like I've been put in positions to help people that, I need to show up. I need to be there, so it's a beautiful dichotomy, right?
Yes. And I love that transparency that you just shared because sometimes our brain doesn't always work on positive reassurance. And sometimes we need that reminder of what if I don't keep doing this work,
Yeah. And
right? What have I missed out on?
I was lucky, I say lucky, blessed, however you want to say it. I started doing outreach almost instantly when I got out of treatment. And I've been doing it ever since. So it's, 6 years, 6.5 years I've been doing it. And I felt a connection when I was out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
I felt like, for me, it was like holy ground, right? It was like church. It was whatever, whatever that is for whoever's listening. And I felt God out there more than I did in any building or anywhere else, right? I felt like, so that's where the fire of purpose kind of was built, right? And then we started building this foundation up, and now it's, obviously become something completely different than when we started, which is beautiful, or different than what we thought it could be, right? Like we never thought it could be as big as it is, and all that. And, you see the blessings start to come, and, then it's just more fuel.
Yeah. I just want to say thank you. Is there anything that we missed that you feel like the listeners really need to hear today?
I would say this, that you're not alone. You're not alone. Your head is out to get you, and what you're experiencing is real. Reach out to people, talk to people, find your people. We're out here. You're not alone. And that was a big thing for me. Talking about my addictions was easy. Talking about my depression was harder.
Mm.
because, and again, just for me, I'm a man, I'm a leader, I'm this, but it's like, yeah,
Yes.
but I still have this, I still have these thoughts and I still have these feelings. And, the way people respond when I say that is, I'd love to say it's graceful, but it's not. That's the truth, it's just not.
Right.
It's been a learning process to understand. And just find your people, man. You're not alone. Take some actions that are outside of yourself, because the only way you get different results is by taking different actions.
Yes. And you just said something really important that I want to capitalize on is we've talked a lot about how it looks different from person to person. If somebody is on that teeter-totter and not understanding that they have an addiction or that, they're coping in an unhealthy way, right? You've mentioned that you have depression and that when that depression shows up, at a young age you couldn't name that to tame that, and so you went to a vice and that seemed like it handled it. So if somebody's in this realm and not understanding that they're struggling in that way, what would be a few key things that could help this light bulb or help this willingness of change?
I think honesty is always the key, right? But how an addict gets to honesty, unfortunately, is usually pain. It's unfortunate, right? It's not, Anderson Cooper interviewed, what's his name? Coulter. It was a great interview. Anyway,
Okay,
and
I'll
he
look
asked
it
him,
up.
he said, you told me that you're grateful for things that happened to you. He said, yeah, I didn't wish they happened to me, but I'm grateful that they did because it gave me a different perspective and a relatability to people. That's kind of my story, right? Like, I don't wish any of this stuff happened to me, but it happened. There's nothing I can do about it. And it's given me great tools to be able to relate to people. And, when I was out there, if you had asked me that question, I don't know if I could have answered it, right? Like, I don't know that I
Right.
could have been honest with myself. I think for those that maybe aren't addicts but are coping with it, with their mental health or depression through acting out or, substances, I would just say connect with help. Try infinitely amount of different things, whether it be the Phoenix, recovery band camp. Try something to get out of yourself, to get around other people that have the similar things going on. And also the fact that everybody has something going on. Just some people are willing to talk about it, and that's it. So
Yes.
don't let shame separate you or make you feel like you're inadequate, because that's not the truth.
Yeah. And it's so true that shame starts to disappear when you find the people that allow you to share your story, your emotions. The shame starts to disappear because you get to work through that. So I will make sure in this episode that I link some of the resources that we've talked about today.
Definitely.
I mean, I'll link my website. I have a ton of resources on there. If there's anything that you want to share with me, send it over and I'll make sure to link it in there. I just want to say thank you so much for coming and talking today and sharing your story
Thank you.
again, because it is important to hear. And as I always say in these episodes, is if any of this resonated with you, please share it with others. Please share what stood out. And if it didn't resonate with you, I hope you can show up for those around you who need the strength right now and just need your understanding. So thanks for sharing that today. It was so good to hang out. I feel like we can talk all day.
For
Before we
sure.
even got in here today, I'm like, our passions just collide. And I know, I'm ready to come volunteer. My kids are ready to come volunteer. So, you have a ton of support in the community, and we'll link how if you're looking to find volunteer opportunities, Robert's got you. He
Yeah.
has a plethora of support that he needs and our community needs. And again, finding that purpose is important. So if you haven't thought outside of yourself in a while, volunteering is a great outlet and a great way to find purpose in your day. I hope you have a great rest of your day. It was great to see you today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope you gained what you needed to hear today. Healing isn't about erasing the past, it's about the strength of moving forward. If today's episode resonated with you, take a moment to share it with someone you love, because when we share with love, we help to break the stigma together. If you want to connect with me and learn more about what we're doing over at Mental Summit to break these stigmas, please connect with me over at mymentalsummit.com. Keep showing up, keep growing, keep going together, and remember you're not alone in this.